Hi, my name is Emily Hall, and I'm going to do my book talk presentation over Dear Martin. So I'm going to start off with about the author. Nic Stone was born and raised in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, and she went to Spelman College for writing, and she worked extensively in teen mentoring in Israel for a few years before returning to the U.S., and she grew up working with the wide range of cultures, religions, and backgrounds. So that's why she wrote Dear Martin the way she did. She had a lot of experience, so she felt as if she could add to the story through her experiences. A brief summary of Dear Martin. It is a book that tells the story of a young African-American boy named Justice. Justice encounters the injustices and inequalities that African Americans encounter firsthand. He begins his journey of trying to cope with these problems by writing to Martin Luther King Jr. and trying to decide what Martin would do in these situations. Justice gets arrested early in the book because he was trying to help his drunk ex-girlfriend get home, and the officers didn't have a good reason for his arrest other than the fact that he looked suspicious. And Justice spends the rest of the book trying to deal with the trauma of this night and how unfair the situation was. Justice encounters more issues throughout the book because of his skin color. And he has people use racial slurs toward him, an incident at a traffic stop that changed his life forever, and his mom being racist towards SJ because she's white. And Justice encounters many issues that he has to learn to overcome and face before he can leave for college and to fulfill his full potential at Yale University. I'm just going to do a brief sketch of the characters and their characterization of your main characters. So we're going to start with Justice McAllister because he's your protagonist, your main protagonist of the story. He's a 17-year-old African-American boy from a really bad area in Atlanta, Georgia. He's hardworking, he's intelligent, he's dedicated. He has a scholarship to Yale, or he wins a scholarship to Yale. And he goes to a prestigious boarding school called Braselton Preparatory Academy. And a lot of kids don't like that he goes there because of his skin color. They think that he's privileged and he only got in because of his skin color. He struggles with racial inequality and it alters him as a person, and he ends up going to Yale University at the end. We're going to go with the second character, Emmanuel Rivers, or his name's Manny. And Manny is Justice's best friend and one of the only black students at Braselton Preparatory Academy outside of Justice. And Manny comes from a very wealthy and successful family and has grown up around privileged white children like Jared and his other little group of friends, and he willingly allows his white friends to make racist comments around him. And then he ends up finally standing up for himself and then he realizes how inappropriate and how unfair these comments are to him and Justice. The only sad part is he ends up getting killed at a red light with Justice in the car because of a music incident with a police officer. Our next character is Jared Christensen, or Christensen, however you want to pronounce it. Jared is a conceited white boy who attends Braselton Preparatory Academy with Justice, and Jared is one of Manny's closest friends despite the fact that he's racist and he usually jokes about really inappropriate things that he shouldn't joke about. Justice doesn't like Jared and ends up fighting him at a birthday party, and Manny gets aggravated or mad at Justice because of it. But Manny eventually also gets tired of Jared's jokes and fights him because he realizes how unfair that is to him. Jared and Justice slowly become friends through loss of Manny because it changes Jared and his outlook on life. He realizes that the things that he did was wrong, and I think that's a huge part of Jared's coming to terms with his inappropriateness, and he's coming to age, I think. He's maturing. So our next character is Sarah Jane. Sarah Jane is a Jewish girl that Justice is partners with on the debate team. Sarah Jane and Justice have always gotten along, and she's quick to speak up as an ally for racial inequality. Sarah Jane and Justice also become close and begin to like each other romantically, and she helps Justice cope with everything going on and becomes his girlfriend and closest friend, and she pushes him to be the best person that he could possibly be. One of our next characters is Officer Tommy Castillo. Officer Tommy was a white police officer who brutally assaults and arrests Justice without reasonable cause. And after seeing Justice walking on the street at night with a hood on, he arrests him, assuming that he's up to no good because he sees Justice trying to help his ex-girlfriend, who is drunk, trying to get home. Castillo was later killed by Manny's cousin, who was in a local gang. And then this kind of goes off to Officer Garrett Tyson, who was Castillo's, I guess, like, I wouldn't call him a teammate, but Officer Garrett was a white police officer as well, but he shoots and kills Manny at a red light for having his music too loud. The thing is, Tyson is off duty, and he drives up to Manny and Justice and yells at the boys several times to turn it down, and when they don't, he shoots them, killing Manny and hurting Justice in the process. But Officer Garrett is killed in prison before his second trial is up by other prisoners. And my last one that I'm going to talk about is Doc, or Dr. Dre. Doc is the teacher of societal evolution at Bristleton Preparatory Academy and is the leader of the school's debate team. He is an educated black man and is one of Justice's only positive male role models. And to me, I think he's like a father figure to Justice. And I'm going to talk about the themes now. One of the top themes that I noticed was privilege. Nic Stone's strongest messages in Dear Martin is that white people believe that African Americans have privilege over them. But at the same time, African Americans can believe that there's white privilege as well. Because Justice is one of the only black students at his prep school, and he is mostly surrounded by white teenagers who have never really had to understand race and the inequality that comes with it. And this gives Justice's white peers a false impression that racial inequality is non-existent because there's not all that many privileges that go on within the school. My next one is Appearances and Assumptions. The novel is based around racial profiling in the United States, and Nic Stone demonstrates that skin color has no bearing on individuals' personality, that you can be smart regardless of your skin color, and you can be deserving regardless of your skin color, and it doesn't matter. That it's sad that Justice has to face police brutality despite his academic achievements, and he's a model student, and he's an upstanding person within the community, and they discriminate regardless of who they are just based off their skin color. And then my last theme I'm going to talk about is support, and I believe that Nic Stone demonstrates how beneficial it is for people to support each other, whether it be through parental guidance or friendships. Justice addresses his diary entries to Martin Luther King Jr. wanting to talk to somebody about the hatred and insensitivity that comes with being African American. And SJ, I believe, supports Justice wholeheartedly, as well as Doc, and as well as Manny and Manny's parents. And then I'm going to go with my overall assessment of the book. The book was okay, but it was not my favorite. I did enjoy reading the book from a narrative's perspective. It is very difficult to read about injustice and how it actually affects people. Reading the story through Justice's eyes would have been better, in my opinion, and because I personally like reading books through a first person's point of view. Again, everyone has their own preferences, so on what they like to read, and that's completely okay. I would not teach this book to a middle school setting, and I would be hesitant to have high schoolers read it as well. The book is raw and has great lessons that can be learned from it, but the language is a bit much I believe, for middle schoolers and maybe even high schoolers. As a college student, I feel like I can overlook it, but I still believe it is bad, and if I had to recommend it for an age group, I would recommend it for college students. But the one thing that I did not like is how Nic Stone sexualizes women in the book. And if I did not do research previously before reading this, I would have thought a man had written it. She writes a lot about how men only like women for their butts and breasts, and yes, this may be the case, but I do not like reading about how women are only noticed or seen for these things. It takes away from the book, in my opinion, and the book is supposed to focus on racial injustice, but it brings too much attention to other issues, and I may have only noticed this because I'm a woman, but it bothers me. Like how when Justice and Manny goes to the party and they want them to get another woman up in bed because she has a nice butt, and it talks about SJ's butt, and I really don't like that. And then one of the questions I have for consideration that after I read it I really had to think about is when Manny and Justice was listening to music in Manny's car and the song says bang bang bang. Was that intentional foreshadowing at the time that Nic Stone wrote it? Or did she notice it later in writing when she was going back and reading? And I think that was a very interesting fact to the book that I didn't notice until the trial scene. But that is my book talk presentation. Thank you.